Habits, distractions, temptations, everyone blames them for killing discipline. But the truth is, they're only part of the story. What really destroys discipline is something much closer: the quiet deals you make with yourself, the excuses that sound harmless, the comfort you allow just for today. And while they look small, they slowly hollow out the very thing you thought was unshakable. That's why so many people live in cycles of starting strong and then collapsing. It's not because they never had discipline. It's because they didn't protect it. They built momentum, but left it unguarded. And with every unkept promise, with every little compromise, the foundation weakened until it gave way completely. Here's the brutal truth: discipline doesn't vanish in one dramatic moment. It fades in silence, in the cracks you ignore. And if you don't learn how to shield it, you won't just lose discipline. You'll lose everything it was holding together: your progress, your opportunities, even the respect you have for yourself. In this video, we're going to uncover the hidden ways discipline dies, and more importantly, how to defend it so it can never be stolen again. Because protecting your discipline isn't just about staying consistent. It's about making sure nothing else in your life slips through your hands. Discipline isn't something you win once and keep forever. It's not a trophy you place on a shelf and admire. Discipline is alive, and like anything alive, it has to be guarded, fed, and reinforced every single day. The moment you treat it as permanent, you've already started losing it. Think about the last time you felt unstoppable. Maybe it was when you stuck to your morning routine for 2 weeks straight, or when you hit the gym consistently, or when you finally controlled your time instead of letting the day run you. For a short while, it felt like you had cracked the code. But what happened next? A few small slips, a skipped day, an excuse that felt reasonable. And before you even noticed, that discipline you were so proud of had dissolved back into nothing. This cycle isn't random. It's the natural law of discipline. What you don't protect, you lose. And the harsh reality is that most people never protect it. They think the battle is in building discipline, but the real war is in defending it. That's why so many live trapped in endless loops of starting over. Here's the painful part. Every time you lose discipline, you don't just go back to zero. You dig yourself deeper. You reinforce the identity of someone who can't keep promises to themselves. That damage goes beyond wasted time. It eats away at your self-respect. Because deep down, you know what's happening. You just refuse to face it. Private victories always precede public victories. The battles no one sees. Whether you keep your word to yourself, whether you follow through when it's uncomfortable, determine every visible result in your life. If you're losing discipline in the shadows, it doesn't matter how strong you look on the outside. The collapse is coming. And let's be clear, discipline doesn't die in dramatic failures. It dies in the quiet moments. When you tell yourself, "I'll do it later." When you choose comfort over growth. When you let a small compromise slide. Each one looks harmless on its own, but together they drain the life out of your discipline. That's how you wake up months later wondering why nothing has changed. Think of discipline like energy stored in a battery. Every action either preserves it or drains it. When you delay what you promised yourself, the charge slips a little lower. When you break your own word, the drain accelerates. Protecting discipline is about conserving that charge so it doesn't die when you need it most. Because when the battery hits empty, it's not just the task in front of you that fails. You begin to fail in every area that requires consistency. And this isn't only about energy. It's about identity. When you protect your discipline, you are defending the image you hold of yourself. You're proving that you are someone who does what they say. But the opposite is also true. Every time you let discipline die, you send a signal to yourself that your own word can't be trusted. And over time, you begin to live like an imposter, saying one thing, doing another, and carrying the weight of that contradiction everywhere you go. That's why protecting discipline is so much bigger than routines or habits. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. It's about the kind of person you believe yourself to be. If you can't trust your own word, how will you ever trust yourself to build anything lasting? And this leads to the deepest truth of all. Discipline is the foundation of confidence. People think confidence comes from charisma, success, or natural ability. It doesn't. Real confidence is built in private, in the quiet moments where you choose to follow through. Every time you protect your discipline, you cast a vote for the belief that you are reliable, that you can be counted on. That's where self-respect grows. That's where strength is forged. And when you neglect discipline, you're not just losing progress. You're tearing holes in your own confidence. If you're tired of restarting, let this be the place you return to, where the reminders are waiting to keep you steady. Subscribe and turn that decision into something you see every day. So don't just listen. Decide. Because from here on, discipline isn't something you hope to keep. It's something you fight to protect. And once you commit to guarding it, everything else in your life can finally rest on a foundation that won't collapse the moment things get hard. Discipline doesn't usually explode in a dramatic failure. It fades, quietly, in ways so subtle you almost don't notice. That's the danger. You don't see it breaking until it's already gone. By the time you realize it, the damage is done. And the worst part is that you often believe you're still in control, while discipline is already bleeding out beneath the surface. The first way discipline dies is through small negotiations. You tell yourself, I'll just sleep in a little longer today, I'll work twice as hard tomorrow. Or, I'll take a break now because I deserve it. I've been doing well lately. Each of those thoughts feels harmless in the moment, even justified. But the truth is, you're not negotiating with the situation. You're negotiating with your own strength. And every time you accept the deal, you trade discipline for comfort. The second way is through exceptions. You build momentum with good routines, but then you create special cases. You stick to your diet until it's a birthday. You follow your schedule until something urgent pops up. You keep your word to yourself until you're tired, stressed, or simply not in the mood. And because life is full of these exceptions, you end up building a pattern of inconsistency. Discipline doesn't collapse in one exception. It collapses when exceptions become the rule. The third way is through invisible distractions. Not the obvious ones like parties or social media binges, but the subtle ones that look productive. You avoid the hard work by doing secondary tasks that make you feel busy but leave your priorities untouched. You check emails, reorganize your desk, consume educational content. It feels like you're moving forward, but in reality, you're avoiding the real battles that strengthen discipline. And then comes the most dangerous of all, the quiet breaking of promises. When you say you'll do something and you don't, even if nobody else knows, you know. And every broken promise weakens your self-respect. This is how discipline dies in silence. Not because someone forced you to quit, but because you stopped believing yourself. What makes all of this so dangerous is that it doesn't look like failure. In fact, in the moment, it looks like choice, freedom, or even self-care. But the reality is, every quiet compromise builds into a wall that separates you from the person you said you wanted to become. And that wall gets thicker every time you tell yourself, it doesn't matter, it's just one time. Covey taught that the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. The same is true with discipline. You don't feel the cracks at first. A skipped morning routine doesn't look like much. A promise delayed doesn't seem fatal. But over weeks and months, those cracks widen into fractures. Before long, the structure collapses. And by then, you're left wondering how it all slipped away so fast. But here's the deeper truth. Silence is the killer. When discipline is dying inside you, there's no alarm, no warning sign that screams at you to stop. It's the quiet nature of these compromises that makes them lethal. That's why so many people wake up one day and realize they've drifted far from who they wanted to be, without ever making one dramatic decision to walk away. Look at your own life. How many times have you told yourself, this one time won't matter? How many special cases have you justified? How many little cracks have you ignored? None of them felt like the moment you lost everything. But together, they're exactly what cost you the future you said you wanted. Protecting your discipline starts here, by refusing to let the silence win. By catching yourself in the negotiations, the exceptions, the small cracks. By admitting the truth, that your discipline doesn't disappear because life is unfair or people distracted you. It disappears because you surrendered to the quiet. And once you face that truth, you gain the power to stop it. Because the same way discipline dies silently, it can also be reinforced silently. Every time you choose to keep your word when nobody's watching, you strengthen it. Every time you resist the urge to negotiate with yourself, you prove that the foundation still holds. So the choice is in front of you. Either let discipline fade in silence, or protect it in silence. No one else will notice, but you will. And that's what makes all the difference. Discipline rarely dies in isolation. Even when you think you're fighting only yourself, there are forces around you that keep chipping away at it. The most dangerous part is that they don't come with warning signs. They come as people you love, places you live in, habits that look harmless, or even opportunities that seem urgent. And because they look normal, you don't recognize them as enemies. Sometimes it's the voices closest to you, not the ones yelling at you to quit, but the quiet suggestions that sound like care. You're working too hard, take a break. Why are you being so strict with yourself? You deserve to enjoy life. They don't sound like sabotage, but slowly they teach you that consistency is extreme and compromise is normal. You don't feel the damage immediately, but over time, you begin lowering your standards just to avoid standing out. Other times, it's the space you live in. The constant buzz of your phone, the clutter around you, the endless notifications on your screen. None of these scream destruction, but they steal seconds, break focus, and drain the strength you need to keep your word. Environment doesn't attack discipline directly. It just exhausts you until your defenses are too weak to hold. And then there's the pressure of urgency. Life is full of tasks that demand your attention but don't actually matter. You end up chasing emails, requests, and distractions that look productive but leave your priorities starving. This is the most deceptive enemy because it feels like progress. You feel busy, you feel active, but in truth you're avoiding the uncomfortable work that would make you stronger. Even your escapes can turn against you. The quick scroll, the short episode, the harmless indulgence. On the surface, they look like relief. But when relief becomes routine, it begins to consume the time and focus discipline depends on. You never meant for it to be an enemy. It just grew into one while you weren't paying attention. And above all is the culture that surrounds you, whispering constantly that comfort is the highest goal. Everything around you is designed to make life easier, faster, softer. But discipline doesn't thrive in comfort. It thrives in resistance, in saying no when everything around you is begging for yes. The culture of comfort tells you that effort is punishment. And if you believe that long enough, you'll start defending your weakness instead of your strength. These enemies don't announce themselves. They don't fight you directly. They simply erode you in silence until you no longer notice the distance between who you are and who you promised yourself you would be. That's why protecting your discipline isn't just about willpower. It's about recognizing the subtle influences you allow near you. Because if you don't name them, they'll keep working in the shadows. So here's the challenge. Don't leave them unnamed. Take a moment and put it into words. Identify the one influence that keeps draining your discipline. Call it out, even if it's just a single sentence. Because the instant you name the enemy, you strip it of its disguise. And that's the first step in protecting the discipline you've fought so hard to build. When discipline collapses, it never does so quietly. It leaves traces everywhere in your life. The tragedy is that you rarely connect the dots until it's too late. You think you've simply lost control for a moment. But what's actually happening is that the foundation that holds your entire life together is breaking apart piece by piece. It usually starts in the body. At first it looks harmless, sleeping in, skipping the workout, eating whatever's in front of you because you're tired of caring. None of it feels catastrophic on its own. But day after day, the energy drains. You wake up groggy. You carry heaviness in your chest. Your focus dulls, your clarity fades. And the worst part is, you normalize it. You convince yourself this is just how life feels. The truth is, you're experiencing the cost of lost discipline before you've even stepped out the door. That physical weakness then bleeds into your work. When your energy is unstable, so is your effort. You tell yourself you'll catch up later, that you'll make up for lost time. But consistency doesn't work that way. Opportunities don't wait for you to recover your discipline. They pass quietly, given to the one who showed up every single day while you were still negotiating with yourself. Nobody tells you directly that you've slipped. In fact, they might still compliment your talent. But slowly, you're being overlooked. Not because you're not capable, but because you can't be trusted to deliver. The invisible hand that moves people forward is always discipline, and when you let yours die, you start falling behind. That decline doesn't stop with work. It follows you home. The same lack of discipline that made you break your word to yourself starts showing up in the promises you make to others. You show up late, distracted, or not at all. You say yes, but you mean maybe. You're present physically, but your mind is scattered. People don't always call you out on it, but they feel it. Respect fades slowly, almost politely, until one day you realize that the trust you once had with the people closest to you is gone. And once trust is gone, repairing it is far harder than building it in the first place. But the heaviest cost of all doesn't come from your body, your work, or your relationships. It comes from the voice inside you. Every time you fail to protect discipline, you weaken your own belief that you are someone who can be trusted. And when that belief disappears, everything else collapses. Because how can you set goals when you secretly know you won't follow through? How can you dream big when you've taught yourself to expect failure? Losing discipline doesn't just kill your routines. It kills the version of you that believed you were capable of change. This is why the cost of lost discipline feels so suffocating. It touches everything at once. You can't separate it. You can't keep it contained to just one area. It begins with tired mornings and ends with an entire life lived below your potential. And it's always slower than you expect. You don't notice the fall until you've already hit the ground. And here's the truth. The world doesn't pause for you to get your discipline back. Time keeps moving. Opportunities keep passing. While you hesitate, someone else protects their discipline and keeps climbing. You don't get those days back. You don't get the chance to replay the years you wasted letting yourself slip. That loss is permanent, and regret is heavier than any discipline you refuse to protect. So when you think about protecting discipline, understand what's really at stake. It's not just your routine. It's not just whether you'll keep a habit for another week. It's your energy, your future, your relationships, your identity, your self-respect. Discipline is the shield that guards all of it. And when you stop defending that shield, everything behind it becomes vulnerable. Ask yourself honestly, what is it already costing you? Where are the cracks showing up? Are you carrying more weight on your body than you should? Are you falling behind at work while telling yourself you'll catch up soon? Are you showing up for people in a way that only looks like presence but isn't real? Or are you looking at yourself in the mirror and quietly admitting that you don't fully believe in yourself anymore? Don't turn away from those answers. Don't soften them. Let them sting. Because unless you feel the true weight of what you're losing, you'll keep treating discipline as optional. And discipline is never optional. It's the barrier between you and the collapse waiting on the other side. Protecting it is not about being perfect. It's about refusing to pay that cost again. It's about saying, I won't lose everything I've built just because I wasn't paying attention. If you can accept that truth, if you can finally see that failing to protect discipline means failing to protect your entire life, then you'll stop treating it lightly. You'll guard it the way you guard what matters most, because it is what matters most. If losing discipline feels like collapse, protecting it must feel like building walls strong enough to hold against pressure. Not walls that isolate you, but walls that keep out everything that eats away at what you've worked for. Discipline is fragile when it's left exposed. But once you build a shield around it, even the constant pull of distraction and comfort can't tear it down. The shield begins with clarity. You can't protect what you don't define. Most people drift because their discipline has no clear purpose. It's just a vague sense of, I should be better. That kind of discipline is always temporary, because when temptation shows up, there's nothing solid to defend. But when you know exactly what you're protecting, your health, your craft, your reputation, your future, you fight differently. A vague idea doesn't inspire defense. A clear vision does. Once you know what you're defending, the next layer of the shield is structure. Without it, discipline bleeds out in the cracks of unpredictability. Think of how easily you break a promise to yourself when your days are unplanned. You let others decide your time. You react instead of acting. You survive instead of building. Structure doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be intentional. A routine that begins the day with action. A schedule that blocks out what matters before anything else can take it. Structure is not a cage. It's armor. But clarity and structure are not enough. The real shield is built in decisions you make before the battle begins. You don't protect discipline in the moment of temptation. You protect it in the preparation that makes giving an impossible. If your phone is in another room, you don't need willpower to avoid scrolling. If your clothes are laid out the night before, you don't need motivation to get to the gym. If you've set boundaries with people who drain you, you don't have to wrestle with excuses when they show up. The shield is not made in dramatic moments. It's made in quiet choices that remove the need for debate. And then comes the hardest part, refusing to negotiate. Most people think discipline is lost in big failures. It's not. It's lost in the whispers of compromise. Protecting discipline means ending those negotiations before they even begin. No more just this once. No more, I'll make it up later. Because the truth is, you won't. Later never comes. And every small deal you accept becomes a crack in the shield until it shatters. The strongest people you know are not the ones who have more willpower. They're the ones who decided once and for all that their word is final. No debate. No excuses. No negotiations. Finally, protecting discipline requires constant reinforcement. Because no shield stays strong if it's never maintained. Every day, you have to check for cracks. Ask yourself, where did I slip? Where did I hold the line? The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Because awareness lets you repair in silence before collapse can begin. The people who protect discipline for years are not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who notice when they fail, fix it immediately, and move forward before the damage spreads. Think about the difference between someone who leaves their discipline unguarded and someone who builds this shield. The first lives in cycles, gain momentum, lose it, start over. They waste years rebuilding the same ground. The second moves steadily forward. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency is what compounds. Every day they protect discipline. They're protecting their health, their work, their relationships, their identity. The shield doesn't just guard discipline, it guards life itself. You don't need to wait for a breaking point to build it. You can start today. Ask yourself, what am I truly protecting? What cracks am I ignoring? What negotiation do I keep entertaining that must end now? The answers will show you where your shield is weak. And the moment you decide to strengthen it, everything around you begins to shift. Discipline is fragile when it's exposed. But once it's shielded, it becomes unstoppable. Build the shield, maintain it, and you'll never again watch everything you value collapse just because you weren't paying attention. There's a point where discipline stops being about routines and schedules and becomes something far deeper. At first, you protect discipline because you want results, better health, more success, stronger relationships. But if you stay at that level, discipline will always feel fragile because results come and go. What makes discipline unbreakable is when it stops being about what you do and starts being about who you are. Think about the difference between someone who tries to exercise and someone who is an athlete. The first negotiates every day. Should I go today? Do I have time? Do I feel like it? The second doesn't debate because the action is no longer separate from identity. It's automatic. It's inevitable. They don't protect the habit. They protect who they are. That's the shift. Discipline becomes permanent the moment it fuses with your identity. When you see yourself as someone disciplined, you no longer need to convince yourself to follow through. Your actions rise to the level of your self-image. But when you see yourself as inconsistent, every routine feels like a fight. You can force discipline for a while, but if your identity hasn't changed, you'll eventually snap back to the person you believe you are. Protecting discipline means protecting the story you tell yourself about yourself. This is why small cracks matter so much. Every time you break your word, you're not just losing a routine, you're rewriting your identity. You're telling yourself, I'm the kind of person who doesn't follow through. And the mind is relentless in living up to that belief. That's why even one compromise feels heavier than it should. It's not about the action, it's about the identity behind it. But the opposite is also true. Every time you protect discipline, even in the smallest ways, you reinforce an identity that can't be shaken. You cast a vote for the person you want to be, and votes add up. Over time, you no longer have to fight for discipline. It becomes the natural expression of who you are. Here's the danger. Most people never make this shift. They live their entire lives treating discipline as something external, a tool they use when they feel like it. That's why they keep starting and stopping, building and losing, trying and failing. They never realize the real battle isn't about habits. It's about identity. You don't protect discipline by white-knuckling your way through routines. You protect it by becoming the kind of person who doesn't let discipline die. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Do you still keep your word? Do you still hold the line? Or do you loosen the grip, telling yourself it doesn't matter because nobody will know? The answer to that question defines your identity. And once identity is set, your future follows. This is where protecting discipline takes on its highest meaning. It's not just about building habits. It's about defending the person you've chosen to become. That's why it feels so heavy when you fail and so powerful when you succeed. You're not just losing or gaining discipline. You're losing or gaining yourself. If you've ever felt the pain of looking in the mirror and knowing you've betrayed your own word, you know how deep this cuts. It's not disappointment in the task. It's disappointment in yourself. But the reverse is equally true. When you stand firm, when you protect discipline even when it hurts, you look in the mirror and see someone worth respecting. That respect is the root of every other victory. Protecting discipline as identity means you stop asking, "What do I need to do?" and start asking, "Who do I need to be?" Because when you decide who you are, the actions follow. The strongest shield isn't the structure of your routines. It's the story you live out in silence, the one that says, "I am disciplined. I don't negotiate. I don't break." And once that identity takes root, discipline is no longer fragile. It's no longer something you protect out of fear of losing progress. It's something you protect because without it, you're not you anymore. And that's the ultimate cost you refuse to pay. Discipline is not a tool you pick up when it's convenient. It's not a trick to use when you want quick results. Discipline is the foundation of everything you value and the shield that protects it. Without it, your health slips, your work weakens, your relationships fade, and your self-respect collapses. But with it, when it's guarded, reinforced, and protected, you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger than everything trying to pull you down. Think about what we've uncovered. Discipline doesn't die in dramatic explosions. It dies in silence, in small negotiations, in subtle compromises, in the influence of invisible enemies. It dies when you forget to protect it. And the cost of that death is not just another failed routine. It's everything that routine was supposed to give you. But now you see it clearly. You see that protecting discipline is not about perfection. It's about refusing to let cracks spread. It's about building the shield before the battle begins, refusing to negotiate with weakness, reinforcing yourself every day, and, above all, choosing an identity you can respect. That choice is not made once. It's made daily, in the quiet moments where no one is watching. That is where the real victories are won. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another promise that this time will be different. What you need is to draw the line, to decide that your discipline is not up for debate anymore. Because once you decide, truly decide, you stop living in cycles of collapse and rebuild. You start living on solid ground. And solid ground is where you build a life that lasts. So here is the decision in front of you. Will you keep letting discipline slip away in silence? Or will you protect it with everything you have? That choice will define not just what you do, but who you become. And in the end, that's all discipline really is. The story of who you chose to be when comfort and excuses came knocking. If you've stayed with me until now, you know this message is not casual. It's not entertainment. It's a mirror, and it's meant to force a decision. If you're ready to protect your discipline, to guard it as the shield over everything you value, Then make this space part of that defense. Subscribe so that every time you return, you're reminded of the promise you made to yourself. Not to me, not to anyone else, to yourself. And remember this, protecting discipline is protecting your life. Guard it, and you guard your future. Neglect it, and you'll lose more than you can imagine. That's the truth no one wants to admit, but it's the truth that can save you. Now carry this decision with you. Let it guide what you do next. And when you finish here, don't stop. Keep moving forward. Because this journey doesn't end with one video. It continues with every choice you make. The next step is waiting for you. Don't hesitate. Protect your discipline and keep walking.